Hi, good morning, everyone. Sorry about some technical issues that we faced. This is Nitin Kukreja. We are here to talk about the business of sports. But before I start, um, I hope everyone is staying safe and maintaining social distance. These are strange times, and let's do our best to get through these difficult times together. From a sports perspective, again, as I said, it is very strange times. Nobody thought that the entire world of sport globally would shut down, and we hope to get this restarted up and running sometime soon. Meanwhile, I'm here to talk about the business of sports. I hope you can see the presentation. We will I will spend about 10 or 15 minutes just talking about the business of sports through a presentation, and then we can take questions, which you can type in. So, thanks everyone for joining in. I'll start off by just giving a little brief overview through the slides. Um, the the presentation is in two parts: what is generally the overall context in the business of sports, and then what the Indian context is like. The basic structure of Indian sport and global sport is that there is a federation, and then there are athletes and players. I think these form the core of probably every sports offering in the world. Um, the basic structure is that the federation is responsible for the promotion of the sport through the events, through the well-being and upkeep of its players, and the players are the real heroes or heroines that make or break the sport. But beyond this, there is one element which starts determining the business model of sport as we see it, and that's the fans. Whether it's in India or the US or the Australia, the popularity, the revenue streams of any sport is determined by the sheer size of the fan base. The reason why football is as big as it is globally is the popularity that it has with fans in multiple countries, and the fact that it's the number one sport in most countries that participate in it. The fact that the reason why cricket is so popular in India is the sheer size of the fan base that it brings to the table. And we'll talk about how we got there as well. Because the fan base is what determines the revenue streams of a sport, any sport. There are three primary revenue streams that a federation earns from a sport. There are the media rights, which typically a broadcasting or now a digital platform pays to its to the federation, and in turn, the media rights are brought in by the broadcaster on the digital platform by the ad revenues that it brings in, or what subscription revenues are brought in. Those subscription revenues are what consumers, viewers pay to the platforms like a Tata Sky or a Hathway or a GTPL or a Den to the broadcasters. So consumers pay to the platforms, and platforms to pay to the broadcasters, and the broadcasters pay to the federations. The second stream is sponsorship. There is a title sponsor, usually for most of the events, as well as for the teams, and that's the money that comes directly to the federation. And the third revenue stream, usually a smaller revenue stream, at least in the Indian context, is ticketing, which is arising on account of the various events that a federation hosts. A lot of this federation's money does eventually get passed on to various state associations, federations, and eventually to players. So the size of the revenue streams gets determined by the size of the fan base. The bigger the fan base, the more money that comes to the federation and the more money that goes to the players. So players' incomes also ultimately get determined by these revenue streams. And therefore, the costs incurred in a sport are towards increasing this fan base, because the more the fan base, the more you start getting money to pay to the players and develop the sport further and further. The fans need heroes and teams to cheer for, and therefore there is investment that goes into grassroots champions, building national champions and international champions, developing the sport at the very grassroots level. Players will remain the core of the sport, and you need more and better players coming through the line from a grassroots perspective to a national perspective to an international perspective. Along with that is the spend that goes on coaches, facilities, training equipment, etc., etc. However, players need a stage to be able to demonstrate their skills. Teams need a stage to be able to demonstrate their skills. And fans love events which are premium in nature. So a lot of cost of the organizations or the federations goes in organizing good, high quality, premium sporting events. Whether it's an IPL, whether it's a Wimbledon, whether it's Olympics, a FIFA World Cup. So these are events that are organized at various levels and at various levels of premiumness. Uh, in most sport, international events are the most premium ones, but for some countries like the US, even domestic events are, and even college events can end up being very premium when it comes to sport like basketball or American football. In India, you would see that international events still remain the premium, but over the last 10 years or so, a lot of national events and leagues have come into play, like IPL, Pro Kabaddi League, ISL, which are attaining some levels of premiumness. In India, we still haven't got down to the level of grassroots and making those events very premium. But the Khelo India initiative is a step along those lines to start developing domestic events and local events and putting a premium event stature to them. The third thing that fans need is consistent engagement with their heroes and teams. So events need to be held regularly. There are some events like IPL which are only 2 months in nature, but through the immense amount of cricket that happens through the year, it is possible to still see a Virat Kohli or a Team India through the year. Whereas there are other events which run through the year, nearly 8 months or 9 months, like a Premier League or a La Liga. So fans get a continuous opportunity to keep engaging with the teams. Alongside this is the marketing of the sport. So fans continue to interact with their teams or get news about their teams and get consistent opportunities to see them and engage with them. So these are the three broad buckets where fans need to engage with the sport through their heroes, teams, events, and continuity of events. And therefore, a lot of cost of the federations goes in making sure that these are the things that continue in place. So the basic business model of sports is that revenues come in from media rights, sponsorship, and ticketing, and costs come in the form of grassroots and player development, coaching staff and salaries, event organization, and marketing. Now, if these streams are missing for any sport, then that is when the government's help is usually needed, and they usually step in with support in the form of grants. Now, that's the basic model. The this becomes a cycle which can become self-sustaining. If you have more heroes, then you end up having more fans. More fans means more money coming into the sport, which means better coaching and training facilities and better events, which again leads to more heroes being developed. So this is the cycle that once it starts, it becomes a virtuous cycle, and it can continue on and on and on. And alongside this, once this cycle starts, then an entire ecosystem starts developing around the sport. You will have people who make apparel, footwear, people who manage stadiums, build stadiums. You will have player managers, event organizers, and various other ancillary pieces like data analytics, etc., that start in a sport once that basic cycle or the virtuous wheel starts spinning. How's the Indian context? The Indian context is that cricket is the one sport that broke through in 1983 and created this cycle. At that time, it was to a lot of people an unexpected victory, but it kick-started an entire ecosystem in India. We got our heroes in the form of Kapil Dev and his winning team, and that led to media rights coming into play, sponsorship coming into cricket, and ticketing revenues as well coming in. And a few decades later, it has taken a few decades, but the resultant impact is that today IPL is the world's biggest cricket tournament. And even from the ICC's perspective, India remains singularly the most important financial and revenue market when it comes to various geographies. So, cricket is the one sport in India that has broken through and created this virtuous cycle and has become self sustaining from a financial perspective. Men's cricket today is showing the same potential. So far, it has been limited to men's cricket and the Indian men's team, with the IPL teams coming in only 10 years later. But again, from a men's sport perspective. But thanks to the performances of the women's team over the last 5 or 6 years, and it has taken some time in building, the women's cricket is showing the same potential, and maybe and hopefully a few decades later, it can reach the same levels and heights that men's cricket is. I think one of the things that it still fundamentally suffers from is lack of supply, because the likes of a Harmanpreet or a Smriti Mandana or a Shefali were visible during the World Cup, but then again will go missing for some time, and then again you'll probably end up seeing them only during a World Cup time. So from a supply perspective, there are constraints, and these are issues to fix, but the potential is certainly there. Insofar as other sport go, various elements have been missing for a long time. Media rights are not usually easy to come by. The structure of the Indian broadcast and digital market is such that consumer money and money from fans to broadcasters is very limited. So only advertising friendly sports can be sustained in India, and cricket is very advertising friendly, where you have ad break almost after every over. So media rights has been missing from various sports. Ticketing is missing because the fan appeal is not there, and even if there is fan appeal, there is no differentiation and value for money to any fan who comes into the stadium. In fact, at times it can be a painful experience to go to a stadium and see a live game. Grassroots development and the facilities and coaches and training facilities are still missing for a lot of sport. And then, of course, event organization in itself becomes a massive hassle, not just from a logistical perspective of getting permissions, but also in the fact that there is lack of proper stadiums to conduct international events. So with these elements missing, the fan base of most other sport has not developed, and therefore the sport needs support from government from time to time till the virtuous cycle starts. And I've always argued for the fact that we'll have to pick two or three sport to start this cycle, and then over time it gets picks up steam. So that's the basic business model of sport, and why cricket has been successful. Why, at least in my view, I think women's cricket has the signs of becoming successful all over again. Kabaddi shows some potential, but for various other sport, various elements have been missing, and therefore support is needed from time to time to make sure that till the time that the virtuous cycle doesn't really kick in. I'll stop the presentation now, and I can take questions in terms of whatever you may want to ask me.